Hi, my name's Susanna Fletcher. My student number is 25980866 and I'm in Kevin Branton's consultation class on Fridays at 9 a.m. This is my oral presentation for the Assessment 1 of First Year Psychology. So the topic I've chosen is the one relating to media, the exposure to violent media and the likelihood of showing this aggression later on in life. So I've done the 3 articles. The one I've chosen to summarise orally now is one relating to particularly the effect of words in violent media and movies. And I've chosen this one because I feel that it really goes deeper into what aggression is, not completely, but not just the surface level of aggression and violent media, but it goes into trait aggression, which almost goes right to the heart of personality. So that's why I have found this article to be really great for this topic. So this article is titled, "Is Aggressive Trait Responsible for Violence? Priming Effects of Aggressive Words and Violent Movies." So this is from a journal called Psychology, which was published in 2013, and it's the 4th volume. So this has 3 authors, this study, Zhang Qian, Da Junzhang, and Li Xinwang. So as you can tell, they're Chinese names, and this study was based in China. All 3 authors were based in Southwest University in Chongqing, China, and all 3 are based in either the Center for Mental Health Education, Department of Psychology, the School of Applied Technology, or the Key Laboratory of Cognition and Personality. So the rationale behind this experiment is this debate is explained about whether there is a correlation between violent media and aggression, and if there is a correlation, on the one hand, apparently there's so much literature to prove that this correlation is very strong and very evident, but then on the other hand, scholars can say that the evidence is not overwhelming and there's no reason to believe that media causes aggression. Going further, more specific into the topic of this article, the authors state that recently more people have been researching into the trait aggression, which is getting into different factors of aggression and not just surface level. For example, they've mentioned arousal, the content of the media, and gender. So you can see that it's very multifactorial in a way to help explain this correlation. So that's the rationale. Their aim was to examine the priming effects of violent movies and aggressive words on implicit aggression by using a modified Stroop task. So in this case, they've used, being based in China, they've used 190 adolescents from a high school in southwestern China, 95 girls and 95 boys, with the age ranging from 15 to 19 years and the mean age being 16.22 years. So the presented tasks, each person, half the group, was randomly assigned to a non-violent movie group and half was assigned to a violent movie group. A violent movie was stated to be about prostitutes and mobs and street gangs, and the non-violent movie was about a group of poor neighbourhood children and the adventures they have together, so very G-rated. So they were required to watch that either clip for 15 minutes and then complete an aggression questionnaire by hand, which took about 30 minutes, and then they had to complete this Stroop task on a computer, which was about analysing their reaction to analysing the colour of a word, regardless of the aggressive or non-aggressive meaning. The results. So there's lots of data to analyse in this, and it talks about a whole bunch of things in terms of the reaction time, aggressive priming score, all these sorts of things, but the main results were the reaction time in terms of the aggressive or non-aggressive word, the mean reaction time for aggressive words was found to be significantly longer than that of non-aggressive words, which means people had to think longer about the aggressive words before reacting. It was also found that for the aggressive priming score, that is how much they've been primed, it was higher for those who had higher trait aggressiveness plus watch the violent movie. So the combination of the two really exaggerated the score of how much they had been aggressively primed. The key results really were that the violent movie obviously stimulated the implicit aggression of the participants. However, there was actually no significant correlation between aggression and movie type, but instead it was all about the aggression trait and the movie type, once again getting into the more deeper aspects of this aggression and how it's manifested after being exposed to violent media. It was concluded that, in their words, aggressive words could elicit implicit aggression in high trait adolescents rather than medium and low adolescents. So that was their conclusion about the study. They've mentioned a few limitations. I'll go on to note a few of mine in my critique in a moment. So the limitations they've outlined are the sample was relatively small and quite specific, so it's very hard to be generalised to a wider population. Also, they've used a cross-sectional design, which isn't appropriate if you're trying to determine long-term relationships, in their words, the final determination of causal relationships. So not enough time to analyse what's really going on here in this relationship. Thirdly, this aggression questionnaire that they had to fill out was devised in the US, and here it is being completed in China. So you can see that the cultural differences would be quite significant in affecting the reliability of this questionnaire. They've also said that we should draw conclusions with great caution and care. So that to me says that you really can't have any absolutes about media exposure and aggression. It really is such a grey area. In terms of future research, they've stated that longitudinal designs would be more appropriate and would be better in obtaining and being able to scientifically gather the data needed to analyse this topic. And also for future researchers, that whole idea of no absolutes, it really is, you've really got to look at the data and be quite, not general, but you can't have absolutes, really, that's just the bottom line. In terms of my critique, I found there were half-half strengths and limitations. So the strengths I found, the identification of using priming words. So that idea of the cognitive processing, I thought was very appropriate in terms of getting into people's heads, so to speak, and finding out what they're thinking in terms of aggression. So that implicit aggression, so really the internal stuff that's happening. Also another strength was addressing levels of aggressive traits, so the high, medium and low, using a dimensional type scale or approach to the topic. And I really thought it identified a human side to this issue of aggression, the fact that people really aren't the same and you can't give it a yes or a no to someone about having aggression. So I found that to be very good about this research. In terms of the limitations, I found the use of questionnaire is always quite risky, or all self-report methods, as you've got subjective and often biased responses, and participants may have drawn the line a bit with the violent movie and then the aggression questionnaire, and they might have had a bit of socially desirable responding as well, not wanting to come across as aggressive. Another limitation was the lack of cultural variety, so really just the differences in whether this was done in the US or China. The cultures really are so different, and that makes it hard to generalise to other populations or population groups. And the last limitation I found, just really overall, it can't be generalised very well to the wider population. The sample size and demographic, the use of the aggression scale. Not all people can be strictly sort of defined to these three aspects of aggression, even though it is better than just yes or no. It makes it hard to generalise, and also there's nothing really to suggest physical violence. So the relationship between behaviour and thoughts really is not clear cut, so that makes it hard to be generalised as well. So that is my oral presentation for the first assessment of first year psychology. Thank you.